Welcome back, everybody. My name is Prescott. I'm here at Psychcinct, Succinct Psychology, and we are going to continue going through Unit 3 Biopsychology from the OpenStax textbook. Now, last time we talked about the nervous system, the central nervous system, mainly the peripheral nervous system, different parts of that, the somatic nervous system, autonomic nervous system, your fight or flight response, your calm down response, all that fun stuff. And today we're going to continue with this nice little graph of the autonomic nervous systems. So here you have parasympathetic and sympathetic. Now the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions of the autonomic nervous system have the opposite effects on various symptoms. So you can see from this little graph, the parasympathetic, it constricts your pupils, stimulates salivation, slows heart rate, constricts bronchi, stimulates digestion, and causes bladder to contract, whereas the sympathetic does the exact opposite of each of those. So it dilates your pupil instead of constricts it. It inhibits your salivation instead of stimulates it, and so on and so forth. Now going on, we're going to get into the brain and spinal cord. So the brain is comprised of billions of interconnected neurons and glia. It is bilateral, which means it's two-sided, and can be separated into distinct lobes, but all areas interact with one another. Now, the spinal cord delivers messages to and from the brain. It has its own system of reflexes, and the top merges with the brainstem, and the bottom ends just below the ribs. So it's functionally organized into 30 segments, each connected to a specific part of the body through the PNS, peripheral nervous system. Sensory nerves bring messages in and up to the brain. Motor nerves send messages out to the muscles and organs. In moments of survival, automatic reflexes allow motor commands to be initiated without sending signals from sensory nerves to the brain first, allowing for very quick reactions. So that would be when you're in the fight or flight mode, your automatic reflexes, you can initiate your motor commands without having to set your nerves having to send signals to the brain first. It can be just automatic flip of a switch reactions in survival situations. So going more into the brain, we have the two hemispheres. Now lateralization is a concept that each hemisphere of the brain is associated with specialized functions. So that your left hemisphere controls the right side of your body, and your right hemisphere controls the left side of your body. So the surface of the brain is covered with gyri and sulci. And the sulci, well, a deep sulcus is called a fissure, such as the longitudinal fissure that divides the brain into left and right hemisphere. So here you can kind of see, but we'll see it better in a second, the longitudinal fissure that separates the two hemispheres of the brain. And then you have your sulci and your gyri. So the corpus callosum. So here we have some pictures. So the corpus callosum connects the left and right hemispheres of the brain. So you can see corpus callosum here. Now, a scientist in this picture spreads this dissected sheep brain apart to show the corpus callosum between the hemispheres. So you can see it very clearly right there, a little bit of a gross picture, but it helps you to better visualize what the corpus callosum is, where it's at. So now we're going to go more in depth into the different parts of the brain. So we have the forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. So the brain's parts can be divided into these three main categories. Again, it's the forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. Now, going into the forebrain, we have forebrain structures. So the forebrain is the largest part of the brain. It contains the cerebral cortex, which is for higher level processes, the thalamus, sensory relay, hypothalamus, homeostasis, pituitary gland, master gland of the endocrine system, and the limbic system, which is a motion and memory circuit. And we'll go more into these here. So, cerebral cortex is the surface of the brain that's associated with our highest mental capabilities, such as consciousness, thought, emotion, reasoning, language, and memory. It can be broken up into 4 lobes, each with a different function. So, frontal lobe, temporal lobe, occipital lobe, and parietal lobe. Now, I can't give you the best way to memorize in case you need to where each lobe is. I just always was able to remember it as, frontal and occipital is in the back. And then, well, you can think of temporal, your temple, so around this area, and then parietal, just remember it's kind of up here on the top. So the frontal lobe is involved in executive functioning, planning, organization, judgment, attention, and reasoning. Motor control, emotion, and language. It contains the motor cortex, which is a strip of cortex involved in planning and coordinating movement, the prefrontal cortex, which was responsible for higher level cognitive functioning, and Broca's area, region in the left hemisphere that is essential for language production. So damage to Broca's area leads to difficulties producing language. So here we have a classic example, damage to the frontal lobe. Phineas Gage, he's very famous because of this little story here. So while working as a railroad foreman, an accident caused an iron rod to penetrate through Gage's skull and frontal lobe. After the accident, people noticed changes in his personality. So before the accident, he was well-mannered and soft-spoken, and after the accident, he started behaving in odd and inappropriate ways. So these changes were consistent with loss of impulse control, a function of the frontal lobe. So see here, so Phineas Gage holds the iron rod that penetrated his skull in an 1848 railroad construction accident. So, and then here's a picture of what the actual accident was like, and I think it's a miracle he survived. So Gage's prefrontal cortex was severely damaged in the left hemisphere. The rod entered Gage's face on the left side, passed behind his eye, and exited through the top of his skull before landing about 80 feet away. That's just crazy. But obviously having damage to your frontal lobe is not a good thing. Just having any kind of brain damage tends to not be very fun. So, continuing on, we have the parietal lobe. It is involved in processing various sensory and perceptual information. It contains the primary somatosensory cortex. Now the somatosensory cortex is essential for processing sensory information from across the body, such as touch, temperature, and pain, and it is organized topographically. So here we have a nice little visual of the cerebral cortex, and just going through all the different parts of your body. So we're going to wrap up this little part here. The temporal lobe, so it is associated with hearing, memory, emotion, and some aspects of language. It is located on on the side of the head near the temples, so again, temporal. And it contains the auditory cortex, which is a strip of cortex in the temporal lobe that is responsible for processing auditory information. And then it also has Wernicke's area, which is important for speech comprehension. Damage to Wernicke's area results in difficulty understanding language. So here we have Broca's area, and remember that's producing language, and then Wernicke's area, which is understanding. So damage to either Broca's area or Wernicke's area can result in language deficits. The type of deficits are very different, however, depending on which area is affected. So if you have damage to Broca's area and not Wernicke's area, the kind of language deficit you have is going to be very different. And so here we have just a slightly bigger picture saying the same thing. And so before we go more into different parts of the brain, I'm going to wrap up this video here so it's not too long, it's more digestible for everybody. So I hope to see you guys again. We're going to continue going through the different parts of the brain, different lobes, all that fun stuff. Again, my name is Prescott here at Psychcinct, Psychology, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Have a good one. Bye-bye.